keep control acá con esto.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. This is Frank Castillo with another program of Frankly Speaking, along with our good friend and co-host.
Memo Castro, good morning.
We're here once again, Memo, thinking about everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks. And one of the last things that we were left with, was the fact that government had avoided any further shutdown, and we were going back to government services, government programs. We were surprised with who actually voted for it, at least in my book. It seems a little strange that we went through all of that for about, 35 days?
35 days, yes.
35 days of government being shut down, not all of the services being provided, only to find out, the people who wanted to get their way got their way, and those that didn't get their way. But at the end of the day, it seems like we're having to address these issues later in January. Your thoughts, Memo? What's going on?
History repeats itself. And I go back to history that in the 40s and the 50s, there was always backroom deals. And that's just what I came back with. And I said, what? If you look at it, the seven Democrats that crossed the line, they did it for reasonings of get the government. They knew that the constituents were hurting. And it's beyond politics. It's not party politics. It's country first. So they crossed that, and I applaud them. But then you look at the hidden message. Why? And then you see the results.
You looked at some things, obviously, in your point of view, and it's respected. Like we said, we've always been always making the public aware that there's always more than one side to the coin, right? And so, in fact, that was one of my lasting lessons that my dad gave me, is always to look at that coin and say, "Hijo, tienes una moneda, tiene dos lados." You always make sure that they come together. So there's a different point of view, and obviously, what I wanted to really bring up at that moment was, fine, if some Democrats crossed the line and voted with the Republicans, which is what happened. However, why did it take so long? Why couldn't there have been a compromise before? Not only by Democrats, but both parties. Because it's always a two sides to the coin.
True, but I think this is where politics plays in. Why one of them didn't want to give out is between Republican and Democrat, and the people have to pay the bill. They're the ones that's suffering. And honestly, I keep saying I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm an American. Maybe I'm an independent, I don't know. But I vote on the values that represent my values and the American values. And that's what it comes around. When we talk about world, global things, the common folk that work, the hardworking people, don't really care what happens in the world. They want to control what they have here locally. How am I going to be? Affordability is something that they're going back. Both parties are now talking about. We don't care about the politics between them, because we want to know if I'm able to pay my bills and I'm able to buy and support my family and build on those dreams.
Yes, and I see your point, and it's well taken. I don't want to say that there isn't politics in our lives already. Every day, we run into situations where if you start asking the questions, why is something this way or another, it does have some history, like you said, that has to do with certain beliefs, certain values, and you end up being not separated, but you end up being having to address them in a sense of, it's the common interest. What is the common interest we have? And again, for instance, that question of healthcare, it's a common interest that a lot of people every day have to go through, and I think that's also part of the message. It wasn't resolved. And so where do people want to say, or how can they address that if it isn't going to be through our politics, through the government? And politics to me is as many people might say, it's a dirty word. It's not. It's the way a government operates. Because we also have a third part of this equation, the independents.
Mm-hmm.
The independents who somewhere in the middle of
It's caught in the middle. Don't know which way to swing.
they swing wherever they think it's going to benefit
Exactly.
their individual desires. Right?
That's what you have, but it comes back to affordability, You look at the package that our elected officials have. They have a benefit package that is very affordability because it's given to them, paid by taxpayers.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we have something
Exactly.
similar? Why can't we, the American people, have that?
See, there's common interest and common beliefs there, Mel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they shine and they say, the people need this, but guess what? They're not willing to come across. At the end of the day, you don't want too much social medicine, but it's gotta go that way. How can we provide for those that can't afford it,
And I'll always come back with this, when is social, it can be thrown around like a bad word. It's actually the basis for our Declaration of Independence, for our Constitution, that we look out after each other through social welfare programs.
Sure.
It's written in there that, in other words, what you get should be something similar to what another person gets. Mm-hmm. And so if that's going on, fine. If it's not going on, then yes, we need to address it.
You look at medication. It's gone through the roofs, okay? Why is it that Mexico and Canada, the product that we buy here, is almost, 20% higher, or 30%, or 50% higher? Why is it same pharmaceutical companies? And it comes back to what? The medical lobbyists, that they don't want to bring down the cost.
It is important to them to keep the price high, mm-hmm. because of the profit margins that they get. And you're absolutely correct. And you hear it every day, at least I do, when you review and study the nations. Certain countries have what they call socialized medicine. Well, they have socialized in the sense that they're government funded. And they're removing that middle person. Mm-hmm. They're removing that person who's saying, okay, I'm going to take the money from government and I'm going to give it out to the public. They remove that middle person. Essentially, that's what they're doing. I don't know about Mexico, Canada that much, but I believe they have regulated their prices because of that. Yeah. That they're able to get rid of the person who's actually making some money, a 10% profit margin or 20%, and you end up being... hurting the consumer. The consumer is the one that hurts. Sure. And so, but then you have other countries, particularly European countries, that do have that socialized medicine systems, and it seems to be like they're very healthy people.
Yeah, the thing about it's like I hear about friends of mine that went to Europe and they got sick over there, and they said, "Oh, I don't have my insurance." They didn't ask for insurance when people were up in Europe. They took care of them. Why? Because I guess
their belief. Their belief to help the fellow man, to be, if anything, Christian, to be Catholic, to be Muslim, whatever it is. All of those religious beliefs come into play, that they help the fellow man.
And that could be that. I mean...
It could be, right? I mean,
the problem lies is that years ago, I remember... when you got sick and then you go to the emergency room, the first thing they ask you, your insurance. And if you had it, boom, you're next to the next line. If you didn't have it, you have to sit and wait.
Not too long ago, and I want to say like in the last 20 years, mm-hmm. That's not too long for me, but not too long ago, I was surprised when they asked for the copay for your insurance before you see anybody. Yeah. In case you needed to pay.
They want your money.
They want their money before they see you.
Yeah.
It was $5 or $10. Now it's right now we actually come back, and I think it might have to do with the Affordable Care Act. And some of the other government services, that they don't charge you upfront anymore. They'll charge you after if they need to, but most of the time. Thank God I've been healthy enough not to have to need any major diseases, that I was able to not have to pay, but it used to be that way. You pay before they see you. That's all. Or you gotta show that your insurance is current, and they do it. They check you, even because you see the people in the medical office running their checks. They want to make sure Memo actually does have insurance that he's saying he
You
has.
could pay $10.
Yeah.
That's what they do. But you know, and like I said, it's a business world, and the quality of a care. Well, you don't really put a price tag it. You just want it, you know. But the idea is that I keep going back to this book that I read in high school. It was called Animal Farm. And it was about really animals took control of the farm, and every animal that, because of their education, they were given something. They were giving extra because they brought more to that. And I think it was something like we're all equal. No one could live in the house because that's the humans.
Okay.
I'm just short phrasing for it.
Right.
And then at the end, the pigs, because they were the smartest one, they started living in
The house.
The house. Then all of a sudden they started wearing the clothes. They dressed up. So it's a fictional, but it's a satire. I don't know what you want to call it, but
Satire is a good word.
It kind of reflects what government's all about.
Well, I'll take you further than that, and or add to what you're saying. Yeah, we started with the point, that we have these legislators, this congressmen, these senators in Washington who already have the benefits of socialized medicine. Government pays for literally everything, right? Everything that they have to do. And rightly so. I kind of agree with it. Yeah, rightly so. But they don't want to provide it to the people that actually
Pay for the bill.
the ones that pay for the bill, and that is wrong. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is wrong. When you have something and you know that it was not your production, it wasn't your incentive, but it was something that's been given to people so they can be fully functioning and do their work as legislators to enact legislation, to enact bills, to enact all this. But you know what? They don't even want to be there because, we're not going to give it to illegal aliens. We're not going to give it. Well, okay, fine. They don't get anything, by the way, but fine if you want to argue that. But if they want to argue that they can. I have no. I respect that, but they don't.
The humanity is that you need to take care of.
You have to take care of everybody.
The humanity part, it's in our belief that you do that.
But the point also, Emma, is of course that yes, we do have those people in Congress and others who just don't realize that we can all benefit if we all just do it together.
Well, the problem lies is this. We know there is abuse. You got to be blind not to see it in our city, in our border city. Okay, why? Because we see the abuse in the medical. We see the abuse in I guess in all aspects of any social services that are given. They come over and they stay here. Instead of like housing was supposed to be temporary to get you back on the foot. You got people that for generations have been living in housing. Why? You lower the basket. In my dad always said, God gave you good health, so you're blessed already. Go out and work. In the 50s, in the 60s, we didn't have that. They didn't have that. We didn't have welfare. We didn't have none of these things. I'm not knocking it. It is good for those people that are struggling, the people that are aging, the people that are handicapped, has physical. We need to take care of. We gotta have humanity in our heart, but there is abuse, and we see it. Remember when they rolled out the food stamps? Hell, I used to work at Kroger Family Center, and we had to live in a budget because I can't buy this. And I remember it started as a sacker, and these people would come in and they gave out their food stamps and stuff. They were buying steaks, they were buying stuff. I mean, hell, if we could buy a steak, in my year, it was not that expensive.
I see your point.
And then I was taking it outside and they were driving in a Cadillac.
I see your point completely. I've seen what you're talking about. Because we're always suspicious of how our tax monies are going.
Yeah.
And I'm very suspicious how government also funds private businesses by giving them subsidies, by giving them grants, by giving them things like Boeing, who builds planes, they're subsidized to a large part, avoiding of having to pay taxes. Elon Musk and his cars, they're giving money because we wanted more electrical cars out there. And those monies, we don't question. We don't question because why? And I don't understand why, actually. And
It creates jobs, that's why. Look at the bailout.
Well,
Look at
being medical creates jobs too.
Yeah, it does, but it's not so far as creating jobs, it's the abuse of the medical. How many people want certain things to be given to them when it's really, it's not a necessity, They want for the government to do certain medical explanations for them, cures and stuff, when really it's not necessary. But there's the abuse on that side. They come over, they had their babies, and with that baby was a U.S. citizen, was entitled to all the full benefits. And out of that baby, a lot of people created their lives with it. I'm saying it's wrong, but you gotta look what the truth and reality is.
Well, I would say that you're right. There probably might be some use, but the same exists in the private sector again. I tell you because a couple of years ago, there was questions being raised about the military and a very wide, a type of a budget that they have, millions of dollars just for one missile or something like that. Well, they were also questioning why a hammer to do something in their facility of Boeing costing over $1,000 for a hammer. And so that there's abuse.
Oh, there's abuse in government. We see it in the local. We see it in, let's not go far. I mean, it's all facets. Local, school district, and I can even point one out. You stood up against them.
Sure.
Okay? I mean, a penny, a square foot, and we're gonna clean, and we're gonna sanitize the schools to protect our kids and stuff. The idea was good, but they crossed the line. $500,000?
Yeah.
If you know that for a fact. And the bottom line, was it right or was it wrong? When you're sitting on a board, it's a
No, definitely something very wrong. Right?
Well, it's definitely wrong.
Well, and this is where it's at. Bringing it back home.
Bringing it back home.
No, bringing it back home to their discussion. You see what's happened with people who self-interest. They are looking at how they can enrich themselves personally,
Exactly.
and it happens locally,
Yeah,
and it happened at the nation capital, it happened here, and that is not what I stand for. And you're right. When I stood up against what was happening now, I just said, enough. We're drawing the line. Thank God I was never part of that equation. But at the same time, I don't know. It's embarrassing. Right now, the way we're at, the way we are at the federal level, the state level, why do we need DPS regulating our roads so much when I counted 45 DPS troopers one day that my family took a trip to San Juan, in San Juan, Texas, to visit, and we counted 45 DPS troopers. Who's paying them?
State.
We are taxpayers.
Yeah.
And what were they doing? What were they stopping? I don't know.
Well, you see, you're in the corridor of the border, and in the border, you have the cartels running, all the way from Zapata to Brownsville. That's cartel heaven. Drugs are being moved everywhere, and I look at it from my point of view. It's really guarding our border and the safety of the people. What price do you put it? How many shootouts that they've been there? You hear it across. How many of those illegals come over here, or those criminals come over here because it's a safe haven? No, we're going to prosecute. It's the same philosophy that they're shooting these speedboats that are coming from Venezuela. And then you have The Democrat, oh no, that's, the court of law says that we have to be humane. But can you imagine of all that drugs that are coming into our country? And the need is, I'm not blaming them. We have the need here because it's killing our kids. It's killing our youth. Do they have compassion?
Remember, Memo, that you and I have discussed this, and very respectfully, we've always encouraged the public to think about this thing.
Yes.
And I'll say it this way. Remember we talked about immigrants and labor.
Yeah.
You know, why we always end up hurting the immigrant, separating families, separating children, incarcerating them, but we never talk about the person who's hiring them.
That is the bottom line.
Yes, right.
You don't need to build a wall.
Yeah.
The laws that are in place are supposed to do that.
That's right.
We used to have an I-9 file.
Yes.
And the I-9 file prescribed the address those issues, you know? And yet they don't enforce it.
So I used to remember when I worked with criminal justice, young men and women also, because they were 10% of the inmate population of our state prison. 10%, 1 out of 10 were females. And they said, "Hi, Mr. Castillo, I just had a joint. I just had this, or I had less than an ounces of marijuana." I said, "You know, I don't think you're realizing this, but somebody did something illegal to get it to you. You might think it's so innocent that it's nothing compared to what other people do, but because it was trafficked in illegally,
Right.
maybe somebody might have been hurt or killed because they didn't do it the right way."
Exactly.
And so you're creating something that is beyond your understanding, but I'm letting you know you are at fault for having done that. You shouldn't be doing that.
There's laws.
There's laws.
And the laws prescribe that, you know, it's not socially accepted. I used to have that argument with my son and my friends, and I used to tell them, if it's the law, it's the law.
Exactly.
It's the same thing as like when you're DWI.
And then you have, I hate to say it, elected officials who actually are in the business of vaping and businesses like that. Well, you know, I'm telling you, it's very embarrassing to see everything going on like that.
You see, the problem is this. It's a social thing that maybe marijuana use now is socially accepted, but in some states it's a misdemeanor or it's allowed recreational because there's a lot of good done it on it. I'm not saying that it's acceptable, but as long as the state and the feds says it's a law, until they repeal it or they reform it, I don't know. But the idea is this. You have elected officials that are supposed to be role models. They're supposed to be not above the law, you know, but there's
Role models.
They're supposed to be role models. People can look at them and say, we stand for these. Now,
Yes.
if you want to be somebody that wants to change it, you get society to change it. You make an act, or it's like one of the issues that we're talking about, gambling, you know. We're surrounded around Texas, all gambling casinos all the way around us. But yet we have the high moral that we don't want it. Not all of us. It's changing. What are the benefits of gambling? And what are the after effects of gambling? It's a
It's a revenue source.
Yeah, there's people that don't know how to gamble, don't know when to quit. It's addictive, you know. But there's people that do like the entertainment, and the resources could be to address educational needs. If it goes, we had the Texas lottery. It was supposed to be going for educational, and it's no longer that.
And I'm going to bring you back a little bit to what you were saying about the border and the need to regulate or control the cartels coming in and pushing their drugs on our youth and the rest of the nation. One of the things that I've always been a proponent of is, okay, just like we did it with labor, or we should be doing it, hey, go to the source. Where is it actually being utilized? Well, drugs normally they're not utilized full time here in Texas. They're utilized in some of the other populations. And one of the things that I've always said, if you stop it there, hey, let's get people in some kind of treatment programs. Let's get them to come back to reality that drugs is not the answer. That will have a trigger effect, a trickle effect of the source. And so when you have somebody who's pushing the drug, they must have a buyer. They have to have a buyer. So that buyer needs to be taken care of. And yes, it's going to take tax dollars to get them in some kind of rehabilitation program, treatment program. And see, that's who I am. That's what I try to propose. Let's do it that way. That way we don't have to have BPS troopers running up and down our highway. And that's how I would think.
Anything that is in the black market, anything that is illegal, has a high value. When you legalize it, let's just say you legalize it, well, it cuts down. But when you legalize it, you put a high cost to it. And that high cost would be for rehabilitation or whatever medical that might happen, and you tax the hell out of it. When you tax the hell out of it, those that can afford it will do it, and then they have to pay a big dividend because of that, because drugs kill,
Exactly.
and maybe too much of it, but maybe that way you can control it, because really
One of the things I think that we have in Laredo, I'll be more open about this. I think it's our proximity actually to transverse between here and Nuevo Laredo. And I know that, it can be very much a difficulty for somebody who's an addict to actually just come across and get what they need without anybody catching on to it. But we have that ability right now. I mean, people still, with the high cost of things being the way they are at times, I'm sure people even start shopping over there or go over there. They used to do it before. I remember when I was a young kid, my parents would go and buy La Fruteria Gonzalez.
Yeah,
That's when we would go, because we didn't seem to have the right price or the right value.
Exactly.
But now, that changed, but still, it seems that sometimes I think we might be going back to that memo, with the economy being the way it is.
You would go buy fill up gas over there, because they were cheaper.
El café, de la bola de oro.
Yeah. The thing about it is that Mexico has always had lower costs in dining and a lot. But the only bad thing about that is that Mexico is that the unsurety, the unsafety. I mean, they lost a lot of tourist dollars.
Of course.
Why? Because they tell you, don't go to Mexico. After hours, don't go. The medical profession. I mean, look at a little town in West Laco, it's called Progreso. You crossed over, they have everything in there. 6 little blocks, that's all it has. You have all the pharmacies, dentists, doctors, and they're pushing that. And it's why can't we do that here in Laredo? It's ideal, but you don't build a fence. You build some type of communication where the city comes together with.
A lot of people, and getting back to their legislators and the people that I always wondered, like, if I travel out of Laredo, I want to say either Corpus, San Antonio, or Carrizo Springs, I'm going to be met somewhere like in the 15-mile marker or 20-mile marker with a Border Patrol checkpoint.
21, I think, 26.
Well, having to check in, it's always been my art, like, oh, come on, do I have to go through this? Yes, I have to do it, right? Because it's the law. But I wonder if legislators would actually know how it is or how it feels if we would do something similar around, let's say, Dallas, around Houston. If you want to travel out of Houston, we need to know where you're going. Or Washington, D.C., just so they get a taste of what we go through, Memo. And I know it's a little bit far-fetched, but people don't see it. In Washington, they don't understand that we actually have, in my view, a border that's, it should always be able to travel.
Years ago, and I sat at that meeting where they wanted to move the Border Patrol to San Antonio, 150 miles inland. And they shut it down for one reason. You give that much ground for the cartel, illegal stuff. To
I
saturate.
would agree.
So you have to maintain the border where it is.
I agree.
You know, Mexico, the mile marker 26, you hit it there, they have a checkpoint. And you have to show who you are, and they check everything, because the only thing that's going into Mexico from here is money. That's it. Or contraband stuff that they don't have. Before, Mexico and China didn't have a relationship, guess what? You had a 300% EVA embargo that didn't want Chinese products in there. Back then, guess what? All those shops downtown, they just were labeled made in USA, where they had to, they would say, that was labeled.
I would have been the first to agree with you that, you know, we need to keep the border checkpoints in place.
Yeah.
And even the bridges. But, you know, what I'm saying is that you get to a point where that checkpoint does a lot of good to help
Yeah.
curtail things, illegal things. What I'm saying is people in the nation's capital and state capital, perhaps they're not used to that, you know.
Well, they're not used to it because in our country, we're free to go anywhere we want to, as long as you're a U.S. citizen. And the only time that you have to check in and check out is when you leave out of an airport. And you're going abroad, you have customs there. And that's why. And I think that is the real reason. You've got to have law and order. You got to protect your borders. You have to, that was the idea of the
We have to
border.
protect our nation. I really
Yeah,
am more
that's it.
believer in not necessarily only the borders. Let's
Well, the
protect our
borders.
nation.
Canadian
you know.
too, you know?
Yeah, let's
Not
protect
that-
our, yeah. I mean, let's be fair again. Thinking of what is fair for everybody. You know, I'm not against any kind of border checkpoint. I'm not along the border. I'm just saying, hey, let's augment our security, our safety with some of this other things, non-traditional. But hey, if I got used to it and you got used to it, let them get used to it. That way they'll have a different perspective. Maybe
Well, the problem
how
is
things are.
you have a lot of bleeding heart north.
No, we just have
No.
very insensitive. We have very insensitive
No.
legislators.
No,
Jamal.
you have
I'm not.
to-
No one's bleeding heart.
Yeah, you do, because you're talking about, oh, look at the immigrants. We're an immigrant nation, but there are laws now. We can't go back and say, well, the Indians were here for it, the Mexicans were here for it, the Chinese. All of these people came to America because America stood for a beacon of freedom. And we still do. But there are laws to protect that freedom. And those freedoms have to be abided by coming in through the front door. Roman Catholic Church in Rome, why do they have a wall? Why do they have a wall? They have a wall to protect what they have in there. But you know what? Jesus Christ was traveling all over the country. Did he build a wall? No. He built love, relationship, and trust. Now,
That sounds fair.
bottom line, did he collect that money? No.
But he also was assassinated.
Those were the days, right?
But he was also
Now-
with those beliefs,
Now
right?
the politics in the Roman Catholic Church, it's a business. It's probably one of the richest banks in the world. People don't know that. You know, those are the things that you have to realize. We evolved. We evolved because we're no longer a backward country. We're a country that had to defend its borders, had to have law and order, and we are still the beacon of freedom. People can knock us down and tell us this, and people from Mexico come here, they've been here for so many years and they didn't get their paperwork. You have dreamers complaining, and they'll riot and they'll fly their flag in a country that allows them. Do that in Mexico. Go and protest there. And I'll be ugly. When people come over here, all of a sudden they find out, hey, I can do this here in this nation because we're free. Do it in Mexico. What happened in the 64th when the students started to riot there? All of a sudden they got eliminated. So we live in a good country.
Well, you say the laws because the laws have been very much more liberal. They have always been liberal with a very progressive Supreme Court who would never be the one making all the decisions. It was legislated, it was Congress, but we don't have a fully functioning Congress anymore. In fact, I hardly ever see any kind of legislation coming from them except when it pertains to local ideas. at the same time, when you have legislators out there taking advantage of their positions, it brings a bad name to everybody. It really does. And that's where I say, wait a minute, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And which is put the legislation that's needed to take care of all American citizens, of all U.S. citizens. But hey, quite honestly, let's be fair. A president who brings in 50 immigrants from South Africa just because they're Anglo, and it's not exactly, to me, protecting our nation either, So he's partial, and when people see that impartiality being meted out, they have a right to protest. They have a right to question it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of our Constitution. We speak out when we don't think it's correct or right.
That's the freedom we have.
That's right.
And now, he may have done this for whatever political gains he had, and it might have been money. It might have been wealthy people wanting to escape and do that. There is a program that if you invest so many millions of dollars, you get U.S. citizenship right away. So money talk, bullshit walk.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly, $10 million for citizenship, get the Trump.
You get to the front of the line.
Talking about presidential
Okay.
ideas, he put out a pardon there for somebody we know.
Well, like I said, let me ask you.
Yeah.
When he said the cesspool or the swamp, that's a way of life in Washington. They hide themselves as lobbyists, and they give money to these countries. Now, why did we help that country? Why did we get paid that much money? We don't know, but they do. But you see, the top echelons have been doing it. They just swept it under the rug. It could be a Republican, it could be a Democrat. It doesn't matter. They all are in the hands of self-interest. What do we care what happens?
Well, I don't know about, the getting a full pardon, thank God, I'm okay. I think you and I are both okay. But yeah, it kind of shows a very difficult time for our community.
They were playing chess, let me tell you.
They were playing chess, I understand, but I'm saying that the overall
It doesn't look good.
perception is, wow. This is what best we can do.
The problem lies, it's going to be an uphill battle. The problem lies is that they play dirty. What these people are accusing Cuellar of doing, they themselves did it. We still don't know how much that Biden got from his son in China, or Pelosi in China, or all these backwards. You hear all of these things, but they flush it. They create other things. That's
I'm not pointing out because it's something that's done naturally. I'm saying though, Laredo, Webb County, our community.
That's what's important.
That's my interest. Like, I see difficulty ahead for us. Just because these legislators reflect us.
Yes and yes. If you judge by performance, I can recall years ago when we didn't have a representative. We had people from San Antonio, people that were not from our area, and South Texas didn't get the attention that Henry does. One thing that I can say, Henry's a motivator. Yeah, I may not agree with some of the things he did, but let me tell you, when you ask, he delivers. I know certain things that he helped us out, and when the pandemic, he rose to the occasion, and he has brought a lot of money. And when he sits on that appropriation committee, let me tell you, that's where the money starts. And when you have somebody of that magnitude, South Texas loses, we lose. Why? Look at all the money he's brought into. It doesn't condone what he did or didn't do. He didn't have his day in court to represent this. I believe a lot of this it's a thin line of how do you call it, can be done. You have to present yourself as a lobbyist and you get paid for that, because the decision to give this country this money is not illegal. It's done through the course of the court and the Senate. And if you get paid because you are doing this to represent and you list yourself and you follow the accordance of follow the leader, everybody's doing it, then you're okay. But to get rid of him just for political reason because I don't agree, and he spoke up.
One of the things that I do know, and I think you'll agree with me, there was other people affiliated to the congressman who actually did already plead out guilty and so forth. And I'm sorry to say, maybe they should have waited before they did anything because
Well, they
if
were
it's
caught
a
with their
part-
hands in the cookie jar,
Yeah.
and it seems like there's casualties, you know.
Yeah, there is, and what I would say, and speaking in general terms, because I wasn't really particularly only saying, Henry, because this county and this city has to be very careful moving forward. We've had in our history, commissioners get arrested.
Oh,
and convicted. We've had a city councilman get arrested. We've had deficiencies in some of those ethical standards that that they stand for us. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the more theoretical. I wasn't really just pointing out one individual or two. I was like, theoretical, it doesn't make us look as sound as we think we are.
If you look at the FBI investigations, they go, South Texas is notorious known for that. It's known because of money corrupts.
Remember that Duval County also had?
Oh yeah,
the
the Duke of Archambault.
Yeah, somebody like that over there. And you know why? I'm going to tell you a little bit of history that I am familiar with. That happened, I believe, in the 70s, 80s, when that was going on. The legislature of the state of Texas actually created a master's level degree program at the university, at our university, and throughout the South Texas, called the Masters of Public Administration. And those are the degrees that sometimes are lacking, which I happen to have one, by the way, because I knew that was where it was coming from. They wanted to make sure that people were educated enough to understand government, and they established a curriculum. And I know the lady who created that curriculum. It was based so you can be a well-rounded source of information and an ethical one. Somebody who would know the legal ramifications of what they were doing. That's where I get a lot of background information. And the Masters of Public Administration at TAMU is going very well, by the way.
Yes.
But that's what I'm talking about.
See, the problem is you have politicians that come in, grassroots politicians that come in, and they start with a trend of doing good, but then they get influenced by the power.
I hear that a lot.
And the power, all of a sudden, they say, well, I can do this, I brought this, I can bring that. And then they eliminate themselves that, well, because of me, I did this, because of me. And then it's me, it's not we. And at the end of the day, they feel that they're owed. And the longer they stay in office,
and I'm going to
they
say
feel that
this,
they're entitled.
Yeah, remember, and I'm going to say this to the public. What we're talking about is essentially it's documented somewhere.
Oh, yes.
The convictions, the accusations,
They're there.
They're there.
They're
It happened.
public record.
Yeah, public record. And that's
We're not
where-
making it up. I mean, it happened. You're just saying your comments
Yes,
of
yes.
what you feel
Yeah.
is right or wrong. Thin line. It's just like you go back to the cleaning contract, the UISD, and I go back to it. It was self-interest. Why? Maybe the result, yes, we're doing something good, but why should I be rewarded?
Yeah, I know that self-dealing, I believe,
Self-dealing.
it's a legal term.
And self-dealing.
Self-dealing there.
And it's a big question mark. It's a fine line that you can't cross over. And once you do, it's etching your history.
Yeah.
And it's always going to come back because we're in that position with the UISD board right now. Look what's happened. Credibility, integrity, trust is not there
Yeah,
anymore.
and people think that it's just going to be one person or two.
No.
No, because it's
It's embedded.
well, it's partly used in the sense of this that you have very knowledgeable, experienced individuals running, just like with the city and the county.
Oh, yeah.
That one thing I want to be clear: there's a lot of good employees at the school district, at both school districts, at the city, at the county, even the state. I know because I was a state employee, and I know because I was a representative of the school district. There's wonderful people who just want to do their job correctly, and do the best they can do to be effective and
Sure.
efficient. We have teachers; they're government employees. You know, I'm definitely not going to throw any. But are there some good teachers? Yeah. Are there some bad teachers or somebody? Yes, they are. But we don't color brush everybody with it.
No.
But I'm saying, overall, our community seems to be so much going, not necessarily the wrong way. It has had some tendencies to go the wrong way sometimes.
It's the differences of opinion and the fact that sometimes when we win an election or lose an election, you just bite it and go along with it.
Go along with it.
Yeah. But the other side of the coin is that you mentioned it, you start labeling. Let me ask you, how has our democracy been really affected? You know, how has it been really affected? You know, have we lost anything? You know, I'd like to know, because within the laws of the confine, yes, they're going after the illegals. Yes, there's a better way of enforcing it. But I think it's more dramatic the way they're doing it, because how many millions and millions of people have been here, have come the wrong way. They used to, years ago in the 80s, they had the amnesty program, and people were given a chance to put everything
Well, I
in
can think of
record.
only one time recently, and maybe it's because I guess there's others, but one time that the Supreme Court has ruled already that profiling of individuals is lawful for law enforcement.
Yeah, but
And so they're gonna see you memo,
Mhm.
and they're gonna say, "Oh,
Oh,
this
they
is
would walk away.
Don't come here." And they're gonna see Frank Castillo, and they say, "Oh man, charged." No, they're gonna say,
No.
"Throw him in the jail."
The thing about it is,
So profiling has been something is in the Supreme Court, or was,
yeah,
and so yeah, it's kind of interesting where we're gonna go. I don't
I
know.
don't know. The thing is, like they say, you got nothing to fear, you're a U.S. citizen. Hey, here's my driver license, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, the para. But then the people that shouldn't be here, that could have fixed it years ago, didn't do it, and they waited till it happened. Then you.
And I want to make sure I say this well with our Border Patrol friends. Every time I go to the checkpoint, I get
Stop them, stop them.
I get treated just right. And I don't know if they know me or not, but I don't think they know who I am. But I have never encountered any issues.
I never either. Never.
I mean, it's like, okay, sir. Yeah. Go ahead. Anybody with you? No, go ahead. And I can't say.
I remember I had an individual that was well, nice young man, well addressed, educated here. He was one of these children that came across, and a dreamer, you could say, graduated from the Valley, high school and everything, but he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Could speak perfect English.
Yeah.
And I asked him, hey guy, we gotta go to Carrizo Spring, we gotta do that. And I said, okay. Never doubted him, you know? And then he started to panic, and he said, what's wrong? He goes, Mr. Castro, I hate to tell you, I'm not a U.S. citizen. Whoa!
Transporting illegal aliens, right?
Yeah, I know. And I was driving, and I said, my God, but you showed me a driver's license. I'm not one that said, well, it looks good. It was a driver's license, but you know, maybe it was fake. I don't know.
Oh my God.
And I said, oh my God. I said, what the hell am I gonna do? You know what I told him? Well, when you get to the checkpoint, just say, how y'all doing? We passed.
You got it. You made it. I don't think I've ever had an
I
encounter.
think if you want to go profiling, it does work. And they have to, because they get suspicious and they tell you
How
that.
can you say that? No, profiling doesn't work, man.
But, to me, it does, because let me ask you,
God.
as a lawman
Yeah.
or experience, I remember when I was working at the jail, we had the good kids, the bad kids, and then we had kids that just because who they hung around, you're profiling.
Well,
And then you would say, and I learned that because you learn things in the jail when you have, like I was driving in my neighborhood, I saw some kids that shouldn't be there. And I stopped and I asked them, what are you guys doing? What caused me to stop them? Because I knew their history, I knew who they were, and you're profiling them.
Well, to a certain extent, correct, but I don't think it was meant to be that, like who you hang around with. Yeah, I think yes, you can identify factors of your tags, tattoos, things like that. Yes, you can do it. We saw it in prison, we see it with inmates, we see it with others. But what they're talking about is just the fact that you have brown skin and brown eyes.
Let me ask you, in this world, discrimination is always gonna be there. It's
Okay.
a factor.
One-
Education is the only thing that above that will do that.
And I'm going to tell you something that I experienced personally. And it's not bad in the sense of, I did something wrong. No, I actually experienced it with my family. We were visiting up north in a city, not to remain nameless, and we had gone into Canada for a trip. And on the way back, we were stopped at a checkpoint. And well, the first thing they want to know is where were you born?
Yeah.
And I always said the U.S., but for one reason or another, one of my family members said Chicago. And then another family member said McAllen. So it doesn't equate, right? When is Chicago and McAllen, they don't know about it. So they finally asked me, besides another person with us, they asked me, and I said, Laredo. I said, well, that's three different people. So would the Border Patrol have enough grounds or suspicion to pull us to secondary? Probably. I would, because you have too many births here differently.
I think what the proper thing would have been when you cross a U.S. citizen. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the fact is that some of us are very true and honest, and they say, where were you born?
Right.
Without saying the ridiculous, well, in a hospital, type of thing, because that will definitely get you to secondary, well, in a hospital. But, but we were honest. We were honest, literally saying, where were you born? And our concept of where we were born is not necessarily only the U.S. It's like, well, I was born in Laredo, or I was born in Doctor's Hospital or Basic Hospital, that kind of thing. So everybody actually thinks differently, and that's where I have a problem or a debate about what is profiling. If you were to tell me, Memo, that you were born in
Michigan or something like
yeah,
that.
like, oh, okay, well, Michigan's just right there, or Minnesota, or North Dakota, I have no problem. But if you tell me you're from Texas and you're up there,
Oh, yeah. You say U.S. citizen.
it can be
They,
difficult.
and then they'll say, okay, what state? Oh, Texas. It's like you were saying something. When we were young, we'd go play baseball across the river. And of course, we were coming back, and one of our guys, we cooked out over there, and he fell and he burned his head. And we're coming across. And of course, some of us were drinking and something like that. And they were young, yeah. Agent tells us, where are you born? And the guy said, right here. Because he fell, and boom, secondary.
That's where it hurts. I burned myself here.
And they said, no. I told him, ¿Dónde naciste? But of course, I was born right here. But we were like, eh.
Well, now you didn't realize this. To our public, we actually have a sense of humor. I think that's why we chat about a lot of serious things that happen in our nation, in our communities, but we also have some levity, some ability to also humor some of this. But we're always focused in trying to make our community better.
Yeah, and in doing that, last night we had our Christmas kickoff, sponsored by where we live at, and our council lady, Vanessa Perez. We had kicked off our Christmas season. It was beautiful. It brought our community together because, La Bota, we have a lot of fighting, in-house fighting and stuff like that. But I saw children coming out and hugging and laughing, and the spirit of Christmas was alive. And I saw a community that can put aside their political differences and come together because it's the youth. Precious resources are youth. And I think that the city, or whoever runs for office, should consider what do we give our youth, what do we give our aging people, what kind of benefits can we make the city good. You know, a lot of people have left Laredo for higher ground to seek medical, but you know what? Laredo is a beautiful town that I've grown. I lived all my life here. I've been Houston, I've been in San Antonio, I've traveled, but you always come home. And I remember the old saying that once you drink the water, Laredo, you come back.
Yeah.
Back then, and now you like, don't drink it because you get sick.
Don't be drinking too much of that water.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, a couple of weeks ago, we had some gentlemen come by to analyze our water, and according to them, it was the worst tasting water that he ever seen. And I said, I've been drinking it all my life. You know, what do you think? Are you telling me now? You know, to make a long story short, yes, I do drink Laredo water. Always have. When I lived in Corpus for a little bit, Corpus actually has some. I mean, I had no issue with that. San Antonio has a different taste in their water. I'm not sure what people gripe about. I mean, it's as long as in my opinion, you have the regulation that needs to be done. I'm okay with it because I have to trust somebody. I have to trust somebody. And to make a long story short, yeah, I drink the water when it's necessary. Do I drink bottled water? When it's offered, when I have it, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, the city has to do better though.
Oh,
I'm telling you that this idea of getting their own retirement, stuff like that, just irks a lot of people. And so that has to be something, hopefully, the future can rectify some of that.
I think they will. I think youth needs to.
And you need a lot of traffic still control in that area.
Yeah, but it's been addressed to some little extent. It used to be before they made that loop, it was horrendous. They made that loop and it helps out, alleviate. But you know, they need to start breaking the trailer traffic to have better exit. And they're talking about something that I don't think I'll see, but I think...
You know, that's the part about me and others, maybe I don't have any issue with others getting their well-deserved services, their roadways, the south, the north. I've never been one to just advocate for one area.
No.
But sometimes I would too. Sometimes that gets very difficult when you see development happening even in our schools. I mean, being developed in certain areas when there weren't really a need to. They were there, but you know, while we heard in our district and for schools, the traffic, and it's not a district issue when it comes to traffic, it's a city issue. It's a county issue perhaps too with the constable's office. So bringing those people together is where, you know, I was trying to do more and more, but I know that there's some people who they don't want to spend money more than they need to. And I said, no, you have to. If you're the city, these are your streets, like you have there for Muller Boulevard. If it's city, the city needs to come and take care of it.
They did.
And so you have issues too over there.
We always still have issues. You have issues that are all created by developers, you know, and who they are. And then we end up picking the tab.
Yes.
And that's the sad thing about it is if you do it before, we wouldn't be paying for it. If you do it the right way, well planned, you don't have to go back and correct it.
Absolutely.
We see that. The overrides and all, we did this, we did that. You know, UID closing schools also. Or they're thinking about it, you know, but how do you do that? How do you justify that? You know, how do you go back and promise homeowners or residents of a district, now you have to sell those acres that was bond for that, for a high school. Now you're not gonna get a high school because we gotta sell those acres. How do you address that?
Yeah, in my opinion, it's really just freezing any vacancies. Secondly, not having to close any schools. You don't ever get rid of employees. You basically have the same number of employees. Yeah, if you need to shorten one wing and not use it, you curtail your operation. Just very simplistic things, but things that can be done now. Yeah. But it's also depending on how in the school district population, how's it going to be in the next year or two? That thing doesn't come into place until January, right? The amount of money given to private to take your kid and with your $10,000 to go to another school.
Mm.
But those schools are not going to provide public transportation. They're not going to provide school transportation. So parents have to really be careful what they're getting into.
Oh,
And
true,
so-
true.
yeah.
The thing about it is that, do you have private schools that can pick up? that?
Exactly.
You know, they don't. You know, they got smaller schools. You know, there's people that say, I'm gonna go over here, but can they have the capacity?
Unless they have special ed too, but I don't know if they do, you know. And like I said, not a hit on them, but I'm just talking factual things that are aware.
They
that
didn't
community
address,
know.
yeah.
They don't expect that. They want the brightest, and maybe even some teachers. They want to take the brightest teachers, the ones that have teacher incentive allotment already, with higher salary. They want those teachers in the private sector. Well, what's that going to leave the public schools, man?
But nowadays, they're not being taught by teachers that have a Chromebook. Everything's computerized.
Well, it is a Chromebook, but the Chrome is a book to the teacher. It's a tool. It's not necessarily just here, have your Chromebook. Nobody ever learns only from the Chromebook, you know.
No.
You have to have somebody.
You have to
It's
have
like any company, right? You don't say, déjalos que ya está todo listo, yo me voy.
Follow the outline.
Follow the outline of the Mary. Man, I think we've done good today.
Yeah.
I think we've
I
done
hope
good.
so, but the idea is coming together to educate or give the
And inform.
and inform, like you said. Frankly speaking, that's what we're doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I really have enjoyed the program. Thank you.
I appreciate your inviting me and co-sharing it.
Yes, sir.
I hope that people will jump and get active because they won't regret it. I hope young people stand up and realize that when they do it, they're doing it for their kids. And they're doing it for themselves too.
Yes, and I've met quite a few people, especially the last week or two, to be able to tell you and tell everybody the primary races are going to be set for, I believe, March the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken. That's when we elect who's going to represent the individual parties. And of course, we only have two parties here. I don't think any of the other parties, for instance, the Green Party or any are having Libertarian, have any candidates, but I could be wrong. But definitely going to be Democrat, Republican, the standard bearers that we have in our community.
What I tell people is know your candidate on the issues, know what they have bring to the table. You know, you have individuals that throw their hat for what reason, I don't know. But you have to understand what they stood for, what they bring to the table, and their plan or their vision. And then that's going to be a part, you know, because the county judge, you need leadership. You need somebody that can come in and has a track record of doing something.
I also think that part of it, to agree with what you're saying, a vision of what do they actually see in 5 years, in 10 years, or even next year, you know, what do they visualize what's they're doing is going to help. And you said it right also. It's about issues. We're not here. I know that sometimes we did mention some names, but it was meant only to give the public some idea of factual things that have happened. But it's always about the issues. Who represents you? Read up on it, study it, try to ask the right questions, or should I say just some questions. They don't have to be right questions, but you ask the questions, Memo.
You got to remember, don't believe on the cañoneros because they're paid to get your vote out there. A vote is very sacred. It's a vote that's going to predict your future, how our county works, how our city goes, how does it move. Do you agree with their philosophy or you don't? At the end of the day, if they go wrong, we pay for it.
And it's about our future, our children.
Our children's future relies on that, yes. It
Yeah,
does.
absolutely. You're right.
Definitely.
Well, for now, Memo, with your permission, I'm going to close it and say thank you so much to everybody listening today. And we look forward to having you visit with us again next week. I think it's just a regular school day, regular work day for a lot of people, but we'll be here and we'll be talking about maybe who's actually now in the political races that are now going to be coming up in March. So
Thank you.
thank you so much for joining us. You all have a wonderful day.
Entonces,